I'm handling the host duties this evening, and I want to welcome you on behalf of many distinguished guests. Obviously, Ms. Sears, Daniel Gade, and of course, Bill Hammock and all the team here. It's a pleasure to be with you. Would you please rise for the national anthem? Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Thank you. Reverend Al Woods, if you'll come up with and give the invocation, please. Remain standing, if you will.
Thank you. Let us bow our heads to the word of prayer and invocation. Dear God, the Father of all mankind, you have privileged us once again in life to come and bow our heads under the umbrella of your presence. Father, as we come, rendering unto you, that is, unto you the things that we should, and to Caesar the things that we should. Father, bless our coming and bless our going, and bless all of those that are here, and especially those that are campaigning for positions of authority, and may they be blessed and keep us all in your care. We pray. Amen.
Amen. Bill? Colonel Hammock would like to say a few words before our next guest speaker, if you don't mind. Mayor Harbaugh, could you come up, please? Colonel Bill Hammock.
I was born, raised in Middletown for the first 13 years of my life. We could take a poll and see if you want to guess. No, we won't. And so returning to Middletown again is a real pleasure, and being a guest the Wayside Inn is a multiplier, and being able to come back here and get this Republican administration into office is worth the drive from St. Petersburg, Florida. And I may make that drive often until we win this election. And I was particularly enthused because of the reception we've received. Our committee, there's 7, I have the unit leaders from the Republican committees who've worked on this, And Mayor Harbaugh has been amazing. And I think one of these days we might be looking at a Governor Harbaugh. I don't know. But as a token of the committee's appreciation, I would like to present His Honor a token of our appreciation and say thank you to the mayor and to Middletown and the Wayside End and to Rich and where's John?
He's hiding in the back.
Oh, John's hiding. Okay, John, the owner of the Wayside. Thank you guys so much for hosting us and being a great host yourself.
Thank you, Colonel Hammock. What he forgot to mention, this is a donation for the July 4th celebration. We have the only area parade that day within an hour's distance, and we get a huge crowd, and we have fireworks and Washington Redskins, football team, Grand Marshals. they come out, so we put a lot of attention into that, so we want to thank him for his donation. I wanted to welcome you guys to Middletown. I know it might have been a little while since you've been here. Winsome's announcement was here earlier this month, in August, and that was a big crowd. If you guys have not eaten here under the new ownership, it's under new leadership here. Rich and Andy Orndorff are the innkeepers, and give them a chance. You know, a lot of people have not eaten here since Leo Bernstein owned it. We trying to get the place back, and it's going to take all your guys' efforts. And going back to whether you live in Loudon or Clark or Page or Shenandoah or Warren, and saying, hey, I had a great meal at the Wayside. This is the oldest continuously operating inn in America, right? That's amazing, 1797. So we want to keep that going and tell the good things about this. Such a unique experience. You almost have to drive to Colonial Williamsburg for something similar. The bar, very unique. Come here and try it. Get something to eat. If you've already eaten, come by and get something to drink that night on your way home or something. So we'd really appreciate it. We're trying to turn things around in Middletown. Tomorrow, Patriot Pride Day. Part of the reason we're dressed up here for Constitution Day, but tomorrow, Patriot Pride Day, 2 to 6, 2 reenactments, completely free to the public. Guest speakers throughout. Come by, enjoy yourself. That's at the Veterans Memorial, a mile down the street on the left, 8050 Valley Pike. Up next, I believe we have the good pastor, Larry Johnson. Is that correct?
John Massoud.
John Massoud next, then Pastor Johnson. Excuse me.
It's good to see old friends again, and how do I say this? I think everybody who was on either 81 or 66 yesterday as the parade for Sergeant Nouse, that was a pivotal day in many people's lives, and in mine alone. As most of you are aware, I'm half Afghan and half Scots-Irish. People ask me about it, and I say, well, let's be perfectly honest, nobody looks better in a kilt and a kufi than I do. But no, in all seriousness, that was a tragic event in which 13 young men and women who were only trying to help people and trying to help our countrymen and their countrymen had their lives wasted by a feckless foreign policy. I make it a point every day to thank our service members who fought over in Afghanistan and who tried to set my father's homeland free from Islamic fascism. Very unfortunately, and for those of you who served in either Iraq or Afghanistan, I only wish that the people who live there appreciated your sacrifices as much as I do. And that also goes to the wives who are just as much a victim or have to suffer as much as the husbands do. And my thanks go out to you. Seriously, it was a very touching thing
to see the videos of the Shenandoah County Sheriff's Office, the people of Frederick, the people of Stanton, Augusta, Rockbridge, Rockingham, Prince William, etc. The list goes on. And the moment the motorcycles came up, you weren't a Democrat, you weren't a Republican, you weren't this or that, you weren't white, black. You were an American, you were a Virginian, and your heart went out to that family. And you wonder about the 13 people. What would they have been? Some of them may have just been cab drivers or shop stewards. Some may have gone on to teach. Some may have stayed in the Army. Their lives were tragically cut short by a feckless foreign policy that actually believes having your Army Chief of Staff, your chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, talking to our enemy and telling them what our plans might be is a good thing. There's a word for that. It's called treason. And you can like someone over on the other side. I mean, in the Civil War, there were Northerners and Southerners who probably liked each other when they were brothers. But unfortunately, when you have to fight, you have to fight. The Army's job is not to make social policy. The Army's job is not to countermand the commander-in-chief because they might not like his political party or they may not like his tweets. The job of the Army is to serve the civilian leadership. The job of the Army is to smash things, break things, and blow things up and kill our enemies, not determine who belongs in what bathroom. Why we keep having to have this discussion and how these people can't get it is beyond me. And the real sad thing is that Millie admits he did this. He's proud of it, and you can be rest assured that he's going to a party in Georgetown or on K Street tomorrow night, one of them high fancy restaurants, and everybody there, the Bill Kristols of the world, the Matthew Dowds, etc., are going to praise him for wasting lives. That is how out of touch they are. The 13 young servicemen and women who died should be alive. They are not alive because of a feckless foreign policy. That's the only way I can describe it. And our prayers go out to them. If we don't have please have a moment of silence before I stand down. I'm going to be very brief before I leave. We have work to do. It is our job to take back this Commonwealth from a group of people who believe that the General Millies and Joe Bidens of the world are doing a great job. If we do not win this election, we are in serious trouble. This is the most important election of our lives. I will tell you that right now. I will come back next year and tell you that 2022 is more important, and then I'll come back next year and say 2023 is more important. This is the most important election of our lives, and we're going to have to convince ourselves, we have to drag our friends to the polls. We need Governor Glenn Youngkin, we need Winsome Sears, we need Jason Miyares. We need Bill Wiley to be sitting on a chairmanship somewhere. We need Speaker Gilbert, and don't forget the local races. Josh Ludwig, Blaine Dunn, these are good conservatives, they're good friends, they're heck of nice people. Thank you all, God bless, and good night.
Well said, sir. If I may, I'd like to, on this Constitution anniversary, how many years, Bill? 234. I heard on WMAL radio today that they have put disclaimers at the National Archives, which is crap, on our documents and our founding fathers were so wise to have created. It's an honor for me to be here. I didn't plan anything to say, but I just had to get that out. This Constitution is the last hope on earth. We've got to save this country. I'd like to introduce to you now Liberty Man. He's going to tell you a little bit about this. Bishop Larry Johnson, if you will.
Dale Carpenter's, Dale Carpenter.
Okay, Dale. Dale Carpenter is going to introduce Bishop Larry. Thank you.
When I look out in this crowd, I see patriots, and this valley is just blessed with a history of patriots, and they go way back even before 1797. 10 years before that, we had our Constitution signed by 39 men that had sequestered themselves in Philadelphia, and they gave us this road map, and they gave us this rule book to go by. And God's blessed it for over 240 years. And as long as we accept that our liberty, that our rights, that what we have comes from Almighty God and not from me to you or you to me, we'll be okay. However, that's being challenged in a phenomenal, accelerated pace today, and we're all aware of that, and we're all here pretty much with the same thing in mind. But at this moment, I'm going to be a little upbeat because I have an opportunity to introduce another patriot, and he's sort of a local legend, and he's also a treasure to this community. And I met this man about 7 years ago, and I didn't have this Continental Army uniform at the time. I felt I had to get this to be in the same league with this guy. But the first time I saw the man you're going to hear, Larry Johnson, who goes by the moniker Liberty Man, he was in uniform and he was talking to us. It was right at the time of the year when George Washington led his troops into Valley Forge. And in nanoseconds, Larry had us back at Valley Forge. And all of a sudden I realized I'm remembering things now because I'm there while it's happening. And Larry has the magic of transporting us back 240 years in a matter of seconds. And you'll see that when you hear from my good friend here, Larry Johnson.
I doubt very seriously that I'll be able to live up to that, but I'll try. I need some help here. Would the mayor please come forward? And would Vicki please come forward, our candidate for the 4th district? That's my district, by the way. And all of you that live there, you better get out and vote. If not, I'll get my musket and I'll come looking for you. And we will haul you in to vote. I need the women closer.
Okay.
Okay? Who fired that shot? Okay? Hold this, please.
Yes, sir.
Well, we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Does it come later? Let's all stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Hand over heart, military salute if you're a veteran, active military. The mayor will lead us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. You may be seated. No, they may be seated. What's going on, guy? You got a hot date? Okay. I'm not used to speaking this far from the crowd. In the morning at 1000 hours, me and others will be at Mount Hebron Cemetery in the Daniel Morgan graveyard, and we will be there with, I hope, 50 or 60 young people from the American Heritage Girls, Trail Life Boys, and numbers of men and women that are in support of our Constitution. At Mount Hebron, there are 40 Revolutionary War soldiers buried there. I don't know if you know that or not, but if you don't know it, you know it now, and I expect you to get up there and make some type of salute sometime before God calls you home. That is a beautiful place. You go to the Morgan Cemetery, and there is a monument there put up by the Sons of the American Revolution, and it lists all 40 names of those men. You owe it to yourself to do it, your self-respect, and also there is a monument there listing 42 men that fought in the War of 1812. So now, Colonel Hamlet called me the other day, and he wanted me to speak to you, and he wanted me to teach you about the Constitution. And I said, be happy to do that on a regular basis. How much time we got? He said, 15 minutes. You're a dreamer. I'm from North Carolina. I can't even say good morning in 15 minutes. But what I want to do is I want to talk about what that Constitution means. And where is it? Do we get the Constitution up here, Colonel Hammond? Would you please bring it up, sir? How about that? A Marine Corps corporal ordering a colonel around. Okay, face forward. Hold the Constitution out where people can see it. They do not have to read it. But what I want to do is I want to talk about the importance of that document. And I hope that, and each time I speak to a group of young people, and any group, seniors, young people, whoever may come, I try to say the things and answer the questions that they have so that when they go home, their life will never be the same. Because if we don't all take that attitude as patriots, and I assume because you're at this meeting, you are a patriot. If you're not a patriot, get up and leave. Everybody's still here. Good. Because those were the people that gave us this Constitution. When the war began, and it began with the Stamp Act, no one had seen a Constitution. They began to fight and resist the British and the King and the Parliament because of the oppression that they were experiencing. And in those days, the King was controlling the people by the following methods. He sent armies to live among us. He sent armies that could go into our homes, and they could live there, and we would have to leave. And until they wanted to leave, we would have to allow them to stay in our homes. The King cut our food off because we would not be obedient. He blockaded the food coming into the port of Boston. And the first person to die, and I know that you probably have not read this in your American history book, but the first person to die who was protesting the lack of food in Boston was Christopher Cider. Who knows that? Raise your hand. Got 1, 2, 3. Christopher Cider was an 11-year-old boy, a German immigrant. His family had come here and they were starving to death. And so he and a group of boys went out in front of the Governor Hutchinson's house, and they were protesting for food. One of the boys picks a rock up and throws it through a window. Hutchinson's aide, they say, I believe it was Hutchinson, grabbed a musket and fired it to the crowd of boys, and he hit Christopher in the chest. Christopher did not die instantly. He fell. There was the first shot. There was the first casualty of our revolution. Joseph Warren, Dr. Joseph Warren's office was not far away. Christopher had been a runner and a messenger for the Sons of Liberty, the group that Joseph Warren started, he and Samuel Adams. They had started this group. 9 men started our American Revolution. They were called the Sons of Liberty. And Christopher thought he was a son of liberty. They even gave him a coin to carry, which is what they identified with to get into the meetings. And so there was Christopher. Joseph heard about that. He went and picked Christopher up. He did his best to save his life. He could not. Christopher died, the first casualty. How do you know that? It's not in the history books. You have to dig into it and find these things out for yourself. 2 weeks later, there was another riot in the square of Boston. And men were protesting. And so the British brought a squad of soldiers in. And I'm not going to go into that history, but The men got fired upon. Several men dropped dead. And the first man to die was Crispus Attucks, a man who had bought his freedom and now was working in the harbor making rope for ships. But he protested for freedom. Joseph Warren heard the firing shots. John Adams heard the shots. Actually, John Adams had just arrived from some meeting. It was wintertime, and he had heard fire, fire, fire. And he thought there was a fire. He ran down and got a bucket and headed out. And he found out that there was a riot. And then he heard gunfire. And 5 men fell dead. Joseph Warren was the doctor there. Joseph Warren is the man for whom Warren County is named. Your neighbors right here, just a mile or so away. And when I first came to this area some 20 years ago, I asked, why is the county named for Warren? I could not find anyone to tell me that. The thing I got, well, we don't know. And I started digging into that history, and I found out it was named for a doctor from Boston. And as I began to tell the story of Joseph Warren, people would come to me and say, why did people of Warren County name their county after a damn Yankee? I couldn't figure it out for a while. I didn't know. I did not know. Did not understand it. But being a member of the Sons of the American Revolution, we began to do research. And in our county, we began to find men who fought in the American Revolution. And all around the town of Front Royal, in the hills, and here too, and over the hill, and over towards the Alleghenies, we've marked graves of men that fought in the American Revolution. And so what I believe in 1836, when it came time that the people of Warren County wanted to have a separate county, and they were determining what the name of the county should be, there were enough of those old soldiers that were left that knew their history, and they knew Joseph Warren. Joseph Warren had written the first paper to say that we should be an independent nation. It was called the Suffolk Resolves, a forerunner to this Constitution. And the king had found out about Joseph Warren. And as time went on, Joseph became a thorn in the side of the king and a thorn in the side of General Gages and Clinton and all the men that they sent there with their armies to keep us quiet. Sound like anything happening today, folks? Keep us quiet. And so, the king said, get Warren. And so there were a group of men that were going to resist the king's army. And I won't go into this history because it's Bunker Hill, and you probably know the history already. Or Breed's Hill was actually the hill where they set up their resistance. Called Breed's Hill, Bunker Hill. And so the contract had gone out from the king. We must get Warren. So Dr. Warren heard the firing at Bunker Hill. He grabs his medicine kit and he races to Bunker Hill. He gets there. He finds out that he has been made by the Massachusetts Provincial Congress, which is now a rebel Congress. He had been made a major general, a doctor. And so he finds his way down to Bunker Hill. He arrives there, and 2 men have already started organizing the defenses to resist the English who were coming ashore. 5,000 redcoats were coming ashore, most of them British Marines, the best that the king had to offer. And there were 1,200 men there from Boston to resist at Bunker Hill. And so Joseph arrives and he says, have you not heard? You've been made a major general. Take over the command here. And he said, I cannot. You have already set up the defenses here. He says, I will fight with the men in the trenches. And he took his medicine kit and he went into the trenches. And so the war began. The battle we started at Bunker Hill. That resistance, the big resistance. Of course, there was Lexington and Concord. But this was the one that the British had to stamp out. All people, civilians, tradesmen, farmers, seamen, just regular men, who had said, enough, we will resist now. And so the shots were fired, and the British attacked. The first wave of British redcoats was resisted, and they returned. They decided there would be another wave and another attack, and they were resisted and beaten back. And by this time, they had lost a third of their army. And so a Marine captain goes to General Gage and says, sir, we are losing our men. We're going to lose the army. He says, one more attack. And so they attack again. And this time, the Patriots had run out of powder. Or had run out of musket balls and cannonballs. And they were firing rocks. And General Gage knew it was over. And so Joseph Warren, being in the furthest trench nearest the British, ordered his men, now, we must retreat. I and others will stay here and guard your retreat. And so that is exactly what happened. During that period of time, Joseph was bayoneted. He was shot. He was beaten. He was helpless. He was in a ditch. And General Gage orders his captain, go finish Warren. The captain cannot do it. He knows Warren. And so he finds Warren kneeling in a ditch, bleeding, helpless, and he can't fire the deadly shot. He hands his pistol to a servant, and he says, fire. And Joseph Warren was shot in the face, and he died in a ditch. There's more to this story. I was asked to talk about the Constitution, but these are the things that gave birth to this document. This is a piece of paper that has no value, but has been bought by the blood of your ancestors, or bought by the blood that have the same feelings that you have. A piece of paper is all it is. It is what is on that piece of paper. And as I came over here this morning, my son is with me, Larry Jr. I hate to call him Junior. He's about 7 inches taller than I am. And he said, Dad, what are you going to say tonight? And I says, I don't know, because Colonel Hamlet's hung a clock around my neck. He's only given me 15 minutes. I says, I can't talk about the Constitution. He said, tell your audience tonight, and this is son to dad, tell your audience tonight that this is the poor man's document. This is the average man's document. It stands between us and tyranny. It stands between us and what's happening in Washington, D.C. tonight and yesterday and what will be happening. One simple piece of paper is what it means and what it stands for. And the men that died in the Revolution until the war was over, they never saw this document. It was not written. They were fighting for what our founding fathers wrote into that document. That is the meaning of your Constitution. If you do not read it on a regular basis, if you do not study it, if you do not teach your children what's in that, then we deserve to be slaves. And that is what we will become without that document. And we have two people here to help me. Vicki? No. Bring me the garment. Here it is, right here. Yeah. I think we find out about the people that fought by their battle cries. They were recorded. What was the first one that you know and you learned in the 5th grade when they still taught history? What did Patrick Henry say? Say it out loud, someone. You all said that. Say it again. Say it like you mean it. Give me liberty or give me death. There were other battle cries. Washington set up at Trenton. The battle cry at Trenton would be victory or death. The battle cry of that wonderful old general that the Congress hated because he was a brawler, he was a womanizer, but he was one of the greatest fighters this country has ever produced. And he's buried at Mount Hebron Cemetery, General Daniel Morgan. They finally made him a general at the urging of General Washington. And so now, the battle cry of Morgan, and the first great victory that we had to show the British that we could stand up to them and defeat their army was by Daniel Morgan at Cowpens. And his battle cry was fire and sword. Sounds vicious, doesn't it? Probably gets censored if you go to school and ask the teacher if they're teaching the battle cries. But our men went into battle, and those were the things that they shouted when they went to battle. Okay, Mr. Mayor, hold the musket. Hold the musket. They wrote on their garments the battle cries right up front: liberty or death. They even wrote on their hats and stuck pieces of paper in it was Congress. They wanted a Congress, a gathering of people like themselves to govern. They wrote on their breasts fire and sword. And I feel very comfortable dressing this lady. I am married, but I feel comfortable addressing her as a Revolutionary War soldier. And so on this garment there is liberty or death. Would you go into battle? Are you going to the grocery store tomorrow with any kind of slogan on your chest? I doubt it. But I feel comfortable in dressing this young lady here, who is my candidate. My grandmother had 11 sons. They all fought in the American Revolution, and she fought. Isn't that something? Eleanor Wilson, one of the most fierce fighters in North Carolina for liberty, and her 11 sons. And so Cornwallis actually visited her house and tried to get her to stop fighting and to call her sons home and give her a musket. For tonight, this is my grandmother. She's armed, she's ready to fight, and she's got her musket. The night that Cornwallis showed up in her cabin to try to convince her to call her sons in and not to fight, she says, "I will not do so." And Cornwallis informed her that I have now captured your husband and I'm sending him to Charleston to be executed. If you will tell your sons to lay down their weapons, I will not kill him. She says, "I will not do so. I will not do so." And she says, "I have 2 sons at home that are too young to fight, but I'm training them to fight. And when they're old enough, they too will fight." And Cornwallis says, "Well, I guess I must excuse myself." And she says, "Would you like for me to fix you dinner?" So he fixed her dinner in her cabin, and he went away. Fortunately, my grandpa, Robert, they called him Robin, was able to escape his captors. Long story. Now, the mayor here performed at a meeting I had at Mount Hebron with all these kids about 2 years ago, and he told the story of young George Washington. I hope you will do that again sometime. A great story, a great story. Colonel Hammock holds this, and it should be in the hands of one of our leaders and one of our military leaders, because it is our military leaders that they must learn about this Constitution. They must learn to defend the Constitution. How many veterans we got here? Raise your hands. You took an oath, right, to defend this Constitution, didn't you? Are you still defending it? Aye, if you are. Aye. Good. I've gone on more than my 15 minutes, but I appreciate so much this opportunity to be here and not tell you the details of this Constitution, but to tell you what it means and what the blood that bought this. The blood that bought this. We know for a fact that 25,000 of our men died in the American Revolution. That is 1% of our population. We know that more returned home and were sick for their life, and they died early deaths. So it was a bitter war. 1% of our population now would be, Colonel Gage looks like a smart man. Probably is smart. What is 1% of 350,000 now?
Well, 1% of our population is 3.3 million.
Would be what?
3.3 million Americans.
Well, that would be how many people would die if we had a revolution today and we fought. You believe that? 25,000 of our people died from 1776 to 1783. So now I'll leave you. I'll sit down, and this will let us move on to the really important reason that we're all here. The important reason that we're all here is to elect leaders that will defend us and to consider this more than just a piece of paper, but it is a part of American heritage. It is a part of our way of life. It stands as the only constitution that is old as it is. And by the way, I am 1/3 as old as this constitution. So some of you that night when you get home, you can figure out how old I am. 1/3 of 234. Now, as I leave you, I express my appreciation especially to this mayor for what he does here in a patriotic way with his community. But I want you to know, when you get out on this road tonight, and I'm going to finish in a minute, but when you get out on this road tonight and you pull out on that Route 11, I want you to say a prayer because of the thousands of people that came down from the ports in Pennsylvania right down this road. This road is one of the oldest roads in the United States, and it led from the port of Pennsylvania into North Carolina, and thousands of people came down this road seeking a new life, seeking a better life, seeking to defend their country. They had two things. They had a musket, and like my relatives, Germans fleeing oppression in the Rhineland, they had a musket, and they sang, "A mighty fortress is my God." And that is what this nation is. If we keep it, it is a mighty fortress against evil. God bless you. The Lord be with you as you travel home this night. And say your prayer. Thank you very much.
Is there a longer, is that cord like can I bring it out?
Can he? Thank you, sir. Education.
I think this is going to be beat up the Colonel night because I promised Lieutenant Colonel Gage that we'd get him out quickly, but he's a patriot, and he's going to lead off with the words of Ben Franklin when they ask him, "What kind of government is this?" It is a republic if you can keep it. Lieutenant Colonel Gage, one of our up-and-coming leaders.
Yeah.
No, that's good. That's good. All right. Well, hello, friends. Nice to see you again. It's great to be here. I am thrilled. Bill, thanks for having me out. This is awesome. Liberty Man, thank you, sir. This microphone must have been very scary for somebody as old as you. It wasn't around when you were fighting in the Revolutionary War, but we appreciate you. Bill, thanks for having us on this anniversary of the Constitution. Little known fact, Bill's a former Marine, as we all know. You only have to talk to a Marine for like 13 seconds and they'll tell you they were a Marine. What he doesn't tell you is that he was actually at the founding of the Marine Corps at Tunn's Tavern in 1775. He was there as one of the founding Marines, so thank you, founding Marine. We're really glad to have you. And speaking of founding Marines, I have a letter here today from, unfortunately, Colonel Oliver North could not be with us tonight. Bill was talking to him on the phone today. His wife is ill, so please be praying for his wife. Ollie's a friend of mine. He's a friend of Bill's. But he sent us with a letter, and the letter is to Winsome Sears, but I, probably contrary to federal law, have intercepted it. Here's what it says. It says, "Dear Winsome, please know how very much I wanted to be with you and our fellow Virginia conservatives this evening to celebrate Constitution Day. Unfortunately, prior commitments have prevented me from being there to encourage your campaign. Hopefully, and this is Oliver North leading by example, hopefully the enclosed check will serve notice of my sincere support as a fellow U.S. Marine, as a fellow Virginia job creator. You also have the prayers of our 18 grandchildren, all Virginians. They are counting on you and your running mates to preserve their freedom and opportunity guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution you and I swore to defend. Semper Fidelis, Oliver North. So, CJ, wherever you are, I'm going to give you this letter to take to Winsome. So I wanted to talk tonight. I'm just going to talk about a couple things. We're going to talk about moral courage, actually, because I think our country is in a place right now where we just deeply need leaders to find their moral courage. And so I'm going to talk about moral courage. But first, I wanted to give you a little bit of a update about the campaign. Who watched Glenn Youngkin beat Terry McAuliffe like a rented mule last night in that debate? Wasn't that great? So I don't know if you know this. If you don't know who I am, obviously I've failed badly because I spent a whole lot of money so you know who I am. I'm Daniel Gate. I was your Senate nominee last year. I'm sorry that I didn't win. I tried my best. But I'm working full-time for Glenn Youngkin. I'm a full-time staff member on his campaign. And I think, with candidates, and I've thought about this a lot, I think there's two kinds of candidates, basically. There's the kind that when they lose, they go away. They just disappear. You never hear from them again. And I feel like I have disdain for those candidates, and here's why. Because they clearly didn't believe that their values were worth fighting for. And maybe they thought the position was theirs by right or something like that. And so they don't continue to fight. And then there's candidates like the kind of former candidate that I believe myself to be and that I hope I can prove myself to be. And that's these who, when they lose, because the race is more important, because our values are more important than any one race, they stand up and they brush themselves off and they get back to work fighting for our values. And so on November 3rd of 2020, I got beat, and I got beat badly. Look, it was a tough year for Republicans last year at the national level. Obviously, we all wish President Trump had gotten reelected. We all wish that I had gotten elected to the U.S. Senate and we would have flipped that seat. But the day after, I got to admit, I woke up in the morning and I kind of had boo-boo lip. For about 4 hours, I was walking around, poking my lip out like a baby. And then I thought to myself, you know what, how do I get back to work? Are my values or our values worth fighting for still, even though I lost the race? And the answer is obviously yes. Obviously yes, because of what Liberty Man talked to us about. Obviously yes, because of the Americans that have bled and died, including some under my command in Iraq, fighting for our values. So yeah, absolutely, our values are worth fighting for. And so that day, I decided that I would continue to fight. And I got on the phone pretty quickly with Glenn Youngkin because I had heard that he was going to run for governor. And he and I have been allies since then. And this is a great man, a great candidate. But I'm going to give you a couple of very brief examples of why I think that is. This is cool. Every single meeting that Glenn is in, whether it's a phone call, whether it's a phone call about something trivial, or whether it's an important campaign update meeting, every single meeting he opens that meeting with prayer. And I think that's pretty cool. Because this is a man who has the values, who has the temperament, but is willing to take a knee and say, Lord, help me. Help me serve Virginia the best I can. Help this campaign, help our staff. And I think it's amazing to have him do that. And obviously we all know this. He's fantastically wealthy, which is great, right? But what's cool about Glenn Youngkin is on election day, so during my race, he gave me a whole lot of money. He gave me as much as the federal limits were, and then he gave to some PACs, and he supported me as best he could. And then he made a bunch of phone calls on my behalf, and some of his other friends who move in his same circles gave me a lot of money, and that was great. He knew I was going to have a tough road. He knew that Mark was probably going to win, but he did that anyway because he thought that our values are worth fighting for. And then get this. On election day last year, this is a guy's worth, let's say, I don't know, $500 million, right? He's got a lot of money. On election day, he and his wife Suzanne went to their local polling place and worked as poll workers all day long, handing out sample ballots to everybody who came in. All day. From 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. he was there all day, rallying, doing the regular hard work of being a campaign worker. And that's hard work. You all have done it. I hope some of you have. It's hard work, and he did it anyway, even though he didn't have to, because he's the kind of humble leader that we need to elect for Virginia. So I'm proud to work for him. I think he's going to win. I think he can win. And more importantly, he can govern and he can represent us properly. Now I'm kind of filibustering here a little bit because I heard that Winsome has car trouble, and so I'm really worried that she might not be coming. But I want to talk about Winsome Sears really quick. Winsome and I are friends. Winsome, as you know, is an immigrant from Jamaica. She's obviously, you can see her picture here if you don't know her. She's an African-American woman who will be the first, she's the first, if I'm not mistaken, the first African-American black nominee that we've had in Virginia history at any statewide level, I'm pretty sure. Certainly the first woman, and she's a United States Marine, which I'm really proud about. And she's a great candidate too. She's been a great ally to Glenn Youngkin. She's been a great ally to Jason Miyares. And we need to vote and work and do all that stuff that we got to do to get them across the finish line. So now listen, here's what you can do to help these candidates. If you have $5 in your pocket, I need you to go over there after this and give it to CJ Jordan and fill out the little sheet so she knows where it came from so she can ask you for some more later. All right? And if you have $5,000, I need you to go over there and give it to CJ so that she can give it to Winsome so we can win this race, because it's gonna matter a lot. But also importantly, I need you to vote early. Unlike the Democrats, we only get to vote once, but I need you to vote early. And the reason we vote early is this. Today, early voting started today. I don't know if you know that. Go vote. Because once you have voted, nobody can use a provisional ballot with your name. You've closed off that slot, so your vote is safe if you vote early. So go vote, and then find people who don't normally vote. Find people who are in nursing homes. Find people who are like, politics is gross. Find all those people and bring them out to vote, so your vote can become 10 votes, and those 10 votes can become 100 votes, and those 100 votes can become 1,000, and we can get Glenn and Winsome and Jason across the line. It's on us to do it. If you don't like the direction our country is going, it's my fault, and it's your fault, and it's your fault, and it's your fault if you're not out there doing the work. And if you are doing the work, thank you. Do more, because it's not going the right direction right now. So, I really appreciate the chance to give you a little update. Our internal polling, and I guess I'm being recorded now, that's fine. Our internal polling shows us up a little. Some external polling shows us down a little. This is going to be a nail-biter of an election. So let's go do the work. Let's make sure we vote. Let's make sure we bring our friends to vote, and let's get these folks across the line. Now, I want to talk about moral courage just a little bit. And, you know, last week with the anniversary, the 20th anniversary of 9/11, I think is a perfect time to talk about physical and moral courage. William Miller is an author, and William Miller in his book, The Mystery of Courage, defines moral courage as the capacity to overcome the fear of shame and humiliation in order to admit one's mistakes, to confess a wrong, to reject evil conformity, to denounce injustice, and to defy immoral or imprudent orders. Miller makes the case that moral courage is lonely courage. It risks being isolated and singled out for painful personal consequences, such as ridicule, rejection, and loss of job or job standing. Given this, moral courage might seem like it would be a rare occurrence, but when it is displayed, it is of real value in preventing and righting wrongs. The military prizes moral courage. You all know that I spent 25 years in the U.S. Army. The military prizes moral courage. Moral courage like the courage of the helicopter pilot during the My Lai massacre, who landed his helicopter in between American soldiers who had gone on a rampage and innocent Vietnamese civilians who were being slaughtered. He landed his helicopter there, and he told his door gunner, if the Americans start firing on those innocent women and children, I want you to shoot them. That takes real moral courage, and he did it anyway. Physical courage is different. We all remember, if you're old enough, we all remember the stories from 9/11. Physical courage means firefighters going up when everybody else is coming down. That's physical courage. We prize physical courage, of course, but I think we should prize moral courage more as well. Moral courage like the fire chief of New York City, who wasn't in firefighting gear on that day, or if he was, it wasn't the full kit. And when given a chance to retreat from the towers, when it was clear they were going to collapse, he said, no, I'm going to keep myself right here in the street. And he kept himself right there in the street, and he was one of the 343 who died. It wasn't physical courage that caused him to do it, it was moral courage. As always, C.S. Lewis, if you don't know C.S. Lewis, if you don't love his writings, you should read them, but C.S. Lewis nails it. He says this: courage is not simply one of the virtues, but the form of every virtue at the testing point, which means at the point of highest reality. A chastity or honesty or mercy which yields to danger will be chaste or honest or merciful only on conditions. Pilate was merciful till it became risky. Pilate was merciful till it became risky. So now let's turn our attention from the concept of moral courage to its application in the lives of 3 United States presidents: Lincoln, Reagan, and Biden. I'll get to that part. Trust me. First, close your eyes and imagine where you were when you were 28. What you were doing, whether you were contributing value to your society. If you're like me, maybe. I was a company commander, but maybe I wasn't the best company commander I could have been. At 28, Lincoln was serving in the Illinois General Assembly and made his first public declaration against the evil institution of slavery. He said, resolutions upon the subject of domestic slavery having passed both branches of the General Assembly at its present session, the undersigned hereby protests against the passage of the same. They believe that the institution of slavery is founded on both injustice and bad policy, but that the promulgation of abolition doctrines tends rather to increase than to abate its evils. They believe that the Congress of the United States has no power under the Constitution to interfere with the institution of slavery in the different states. They believe that the Congress of the United States has the power under the Constitution to abolish slavery in the District of Columbia, but that power ought not to be exercised unless at the request of the people of said district. The difference between these opinions and those contained in the said resolutions is their reason for entering this protest. In other words, in case you can't follow the 1838-ish language, in other words, Lincoln was saying that at great risk, at great moral risk, he was showing the courage to stand up against the institution of slavery when other people were saying, yeah, slavery's bad, but we can't do anything about it. Lincoln was saying slavery's bad and we must do something about it. And that took real moral courage. In the famous Lincoln-Douglas debates during his 3rd unsuccessful run for U.S. Senate, I don't know how he had the capacity to do that. People ask me all the time, hey, are you going to run again? Are you going to run again? I'm like, maybe. 3rd time? Boy, 3rd time anyway. During his 3rd unsuccessful run for U.S. Senate, he says, Judge Douglas and whoever likes him teaches that the Negro has no share, humble though it may be in the Declaration of Independence, is going back to the era of our liberty and independence, and so far as in him lies, muzzling the cannon that thunders its annual joyous return, that he is blowing out the moral lights around us when he contends that whoever wants slaves has a right to hold them, that he is penetrating so far as lies in his power the human soul and eradicating the light of reason and the love of liberty when he is in every possible way preparing the public mind by his vast influence for making the institution of slavery perpetual and national. That Lincoln's position on slavery evolved throughout his life is in no question. That he eventually captained the ship of state through the stormiest possible seas is also of no question. And that took moral courage, which Lincoln had in abundance. Reagan, similarly, had intense moral courage. In between his 2 terms as governor of California and his successful run for the presidency in 1980, Reagan laid out in speeches, writings, and his radio show much, of the modern foundation of the Republican Party. In office, his achievements became legendary. You may remember this. He fired the entire air traffic control system when they went on strike against the law. He appointed, against the cultural zeitgeist and against the wishes of some hardliners in his own party, the first woman to the Supreme Court. He bucked the entire political system in order to promote the so-called Star Wars system of missile defense, putting American interests ahead of all else. He refused to negotiate with terrorists when TWA Flight 847 was hijacked. But most importantly, if not the most important achievement of the 20th century, certainly among the top 5, Reagan stood as a brick wall against the Soviet Union's expansionist tendencies, unleashing the credibility and leadership of the United States and toppling that evil regime to dust. That took moral courage, which Reagan had in abundance. And upon receiving his terminal Alzheimer's diagnosis, the Gipper said, "I now begin the journey that will lead me into the sunset of my life. I know that for America, there will always be a bright dawn ahead." And now let's talk about the moral courage of Joe Biden. A friend of mine named France Huang. I graduated from West Point in 1997. France graduated a couple years before me in 1995. A friend of mine named France Huang was a boat person, or not, I guess technically not a boat person since he got on a plane. But on April 23rd, 1975, France's parents were carrying him onto a C-141 Starlifter that was going to take him to safety out of South Vietnam. He was 2 years old. And Gerald Ford, the president, using his own moral courage, had ordered that airlift to take place, despite the wishes of the Democrats who were in charge at the time. Get this, then Senator Joe Biden said on the floor of the United States Senate on that same day, April 23rd, 1975, he said this: "The United States has no obligation to evacuate 1 or 100,001 South Vietnamese." Think about this. This is a man who 46 years ago had the same position on our allies then as he did now. He was a coward then and he's a coward now. Utter lack of moral courage. Why? Who knows? Perhaps his familiar relationship with the Chinese government. Let's say it's his familiar relationship with the Chinese government. The Chinese may have called him and said, "Hey, we want the $1 trillion worth of lithium that's in Afghanistan, and you're going to get out, or we're going to pull the rug out from underneath you." Maybe they've got dirt on him, I don't know. That's gross speculation, but it might be true. Or perhaps he has no feeling in his heart for the tens of thousands of men and some women, all those families who helped us through 20 years of war at great risk to themselves. I personally have a soft spot for interpreters. I had one sitting in the truck behind me on the day I got blown up. He was serving his country by serving our country. And he was wounded in that same incident, although not as badly as I was. Perhaps his rhetoric about human rights is so much fluff in the breeze. Who knows with this guy? What we do know is that that's not even touching the full depravity of this president. The full lack of courage. He doesn't stand up against his party on abortion, or guns, or lockdowns, or spending our children into oblivion. Instead, it's full steam ahead in a direction that will lead our country to national ruin. And so what do? How do we respond to this ongoing assault on our country, on our values, on our rights? Here's what I would call to you. I would call to you to commit yourselves, again, to the principles which made America great in the first place. Commit yourself, recommit yourself to the Constitution. The first document in the history of man, by the way, to say that the people are the boss of government and not the other way around. Recommit yourself. Thank you. Recommit yourself to having the courage to stand against evil, no matter where it occurs and no matter who's doing it. And that's how this party, our party, continues to be relevant in a world that is hostile to moral courage and that would prefer passivity and our ongoing decline. Please join me in praying for our country, praying for our state as we go forward here tonight. God, I just ask your hand on our country. Ask your hand on our Commonwealth. Ask your hand on these great candidates who are running to represent us. Lord, we know that you set up kingdoms and you allow them to fall. You pick rulers and you pick when rulers fail. And Lord, for all the crimes our country has committed against the unborn and against people who are vulnerable and all of that, you have stayed your hand. You have given us mercy and not justice. And Lord, I just ask that you would continue to give mercy to our country. And please, please stay your hand and don't give us the justice we have so earned. Because your justice would be swift and fierce, and I'm afraid that we cannot withstand it. So God, please give us mercy. Please give us the mercy to have our great candidates win, to save the unborn, to save our families, to save this Commonwealth, and to save our country. In your name I pray, amen.